You're listening to Your Superpowered Mind on the Superpower Up podcast, the show that investigates the innate power within your brain to create lasting change.
Hi, everyone. This is Kristin Maxwell, and you are listening to the Superpowered Mind. We have a very interesting guest today. We're going to be talking to Tatiana Berindei about reclaiming personal power through female sexuality. And Tatiana is the host of the Sex, Love, and SuperPowers podcast. She is a spiritual counselor, an ordained minister through the Center for Sacred Studies, a former doula and midwife, and now loves to work with women, especially with mothers, to help them reclaim their feminine power and embrace their sexuality in a profound and healthy way. Tatiana, welcome to Your Superpowered Mind.
Thanks so much for having me, Kristin.
You're welcome. I'm excited to talk to you and learn some of your wisdom. So my first question is always, what superpower did you discover as a result of mastering your mind?
Yeah, I thought this is a really interesting question. And it presupposes that I've mastered my mind, or assumes that I've mastered my mind, which I don't know that I would actually claim. I may be in the process of that, but I would hesitate to call myself a master of the mind. But I think, when I was sitting with this question, the answer that came to me was really the realizing that I had choice, or that I have choice in every moment in terms of where I direct my thoughts.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tell us, the listeners might not even know that themselves. So, and it's something that I need to learn and relearn daily, actually.
Yeah, me too. But I think that there is a real, I've been in the process of tracking my thoughts ever since childhood, really. I remember laying in bed at night and finding myself thinking something and wondering how I got to that thought. So I would trace my thoughts backwards. So I've been in the study of the mind for a long time. And what I've come to realize over the course of years and life experience is that I have actually choice in terms of how I direct my thinking. A lot of people assume and believe that our thoughts are just occurring randomly, and we have absolutely no control over them. And that has actually not been my experience. And it's taken me many, many years of meditation and study and traveling through all sorts of different wisdom traditions to come to a place of realizing that I actually can stop myself. If I find myself going on a negative thought spiral, I can stop and I can redirect the way that I think and what I'm thinking about and what I'm doing in the moment. And it's a practice, and I do not claim to have mastered it, but I do know that it's possible. And I do know that the effects of that are incredibly powerful have been on my life and on my clients' lives as well.
Yes, I am so with you there. I, as some people know, I had terrible anxiety for decades. Really, I would have said I was very anxious. Whatever, I identified with that, and to learn eventually that I could actually train my mind and choose a different way of thinking, and choosing it consciously again and again and again and again till actually it happened automatically. Mm-hmm. And it literally, I have called it a miracle. Mm-hmm. It feels like a miracle on how the quality of my life has changed. So thank you for calling that out.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of us feel very trapped in our thoughts. Yes.
And we're not as trapped as we think. It does take work, and it does take tremendous effort and desire to retrain and repattern the way that we think.
Yes. And for me, it always helps me, and with some of my clients who are more in the present physical, is to think about it as working on a muscle. Like you're literally just strengthening a different muscle. It just happens to be one you can't see inside your head.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So one of the things that I am really eager to talk to you about today is what kind of work that you do with people in terms of reclaiming feminine power and working around the divine feminine. Because first of all, can you even explain to us, what do you mean? And this might seem very elementary to you, but what do you mean by the divine feminine and by feminine power?
I love that you asked that question, because I actually had that same question come up when you just said that, of and it's funny because I am so inside of this work, and yet just where I'm at in my own evolutionary process, I'm sort of questioning everything of that kind of a nature right now. So of course you would ask me that.
Yes.
The way that I have...
Well, and the great thing is you don't have to have... Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
you don't have to have a great answer.
Yeah.
Right.
But the way that I have been relating to the divine feminine is just through this understanding of, for many, many years historically, we can look at sort of the oppression of women over the course of history, and this process of reclaiming the divine feminine is accessing this innate part of ourselves, this innate aspect of being a woman that has kind of been usurped in the process of historical oppression, right? So that's sort of how I have been relating to my understanding of the divine feminine, is really getting us back in touch with our bodies, with our wombs, with our ability to create life, with our connection to the earth and abundance and fertility, and that whole aspect of life. And then of course there's also the more yielding side of the nature. There's the willingness to sit in stillness. There's the willingness to stop and slow down, and connect with a more natural rhythm. I mean, that's been that's sort of like a really long, circuitous answer for how I've been relating to divine feminine in my work thus far.
Wow, it's almost soothing to hear you describe it. It feels very connected and natural just to hear you say that. And we're going to have to take a quick break right now. But when we do come back, I'm really going to be very curious about how you work with people and what you suggest about reclaiming personal power through female sexuality, because that's interesting to us. Before we go, can you tell people where they can learn more about you, Tatiana?
Absolutely. They can learn more about me through the Sex, Love, and SuperPowers show, which is on iTunes through the Superpower Up podcast. They can go to superpowerexperts.com and they can find out more about me there. They can also go to tatianaberindei.com, which will take them directly to my page on the Superpower Experts website.
Great. And we'll have that in your notes, because trying to spell your name is not the simplest.
No, it's not. Yeah. So that link will just
okay. We'll be back.
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect.
Okay. Thanks. We'll be back in a moment.
Are you here to change the world? Do you talk about things like vibration, frequency, awakening, and consciousness? Are you pretty sure you have superpowers? The Superpower Net is unlike normal coaching programs and conscious communities. We provide training, intuitive guidance, peer-to-peer learning, intensive one-on-one coaching, and a high vibrational network of people just like you. When you join the net, you get 24/7 access to a collaborative group of people who support you as you master your personal power and unlock your superpowers. If you're ready to use your superpowers to change the world, then join the Superpower Net today. Visit superpowerexperts.com/the-net to learn more.
Welcome back, everyone. We are talking to Tatiana Berindei about reclaiming your personal feminine power through sexuality. And Tatiana, I guess one of my first thoughts when I think about that is, just on a day-to-day level, or in a being inside your body and living in the world, what does feminine power look like or feel?
Yeah, I think
I can't. Oops, there you are.
Yeah. Something weird just happened with the connection. But what I heard you ask was, what does feminine power look like or feel like from the day to day?
Yes.
And I think feel like is really a better question than look like, because we're so image oriented in our culture, especially as women, that I kind of really am. I don't want women to have an image of what that is supposed to look like. And really a lot of the work that I do with my clients is, what does that feel like from the inside out? Because if you're embodying it from the inside out, it will look like people will notice, they will say, wow, you're like super embodied. There's a thing that happens when you are in relationship with someone who is in their body. Right. But so many of us, men and women, but of course, we're talking about feminine power, and feminine power doesn't just exist in women, by the way, in women bodies. I really do think that the divine feminine and divine masculine are energetics that all of us have within us. So I just want to clarify that. And I have, a woman's body. And so that's the body that I've gotten to know this work through. And that's the body that I tend to support as other women's bodies. And that's been, the bulk of my practice. But we all have that divine feminine energetic within us. So, but as women, a lot of us, it's 1 in 4 women have suffered some form of sexual abuse. And so to be inside of the body is actually unsafe for a lot of women. And getting comfortable with being in the body. And also I want to say, like, whether or not we've suffered sexual abuse, there can be a discomfort in fully inhabiting the body as women because of all of the media images that we've been subject to, and because we've been encouraged to be so externally focused in our presentation, and that it's like, I care more about what my face looks like than how incredibly painful and uncomfortable my body is wearing these shoes and how it's screaming at me right now. And I actually, if I was to fully be in my body, I wouldn't wear shoes like this, There's this, how does it feel to inhabit this sacred vessel? How does it feel to be in awareness of breath, in awareness of the pelvic bowl, in awareness of feet? And to just acknowledge, I have a body and here it is. And I can touch it and I can be inside of it and I can inhabit it. And for a lot of people, that's a lot of work. Because at some point in their journey, it was safer to not be in the body. So that's a lot of the work that I do with my clients. It's just how do we be in this vessel and be comfortable?
Right. And I would suspect that there's a whole level of work that you do just helping people to feel like what it is to be really inhabiting their body, and then by themselves.
Yeah.
And then the whole process about how to inhabit it when you then go out into the world.
Yes.
How do you maintain that?
Yes.
Yeah. Because that's always a whole new level of expertise. It's easier to do it when we're by ourselves, away from the challenges of the world.
Absolutely.
And
that's still a practice for me. Like, I'm going to be totally honest with that. I have not mastered that one yet. I'm in the process of that. I'm in the practice of it. And so I'm very attuned to what that practice is, which is why I'm so good at what I do with my clients, because I know how challenging it is. and I can,
Yes.
and I'm a student of that process. And so I can speak directly to what someone goes through and what my experience has been of when I am successful at that, what that looks like and how to get there.
Yeah, that's really interesting because, I mean, I would say that I've always felt very comfortable in my body, and I was not very comfortable in my head and in my mind.
Mm.
So that was because it was so torturous at times.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very interesting. I love this perspectives, and it's also just an awakening of, have I actually really thought to really be in my body, in my toes and in my womb.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I love that. What if you have, for our listeners, I always love to give them some practice or tool or question that they can take themselves to get a feeling of what this feels like, or what your work is like. What's a tip that you could suggest for them to try to feel what it's like to be in their body?
Well, the breath is my favorite tool. The breath and the earth. I'll say I have two favorite tools. And so to really take your shoes off and go stand barefoot on the earth and to breathe into your belly and to direct that breath down into your feet and bring awareness to your feet touching the earth and awareness of your breath in your belly. That is a huge process for some people, and a revolutionary one if you are someone who has not been connected to your breath or your feet or your body or the earth. It sounds very simple because it is, and yet it's very profound. Even if you are someone who is connected, that's like one of the simplest and most profound practices I think that exists.
That it sounds, it's beautiful. I do know that, living in Southern California, we get a lot of sun. Mm-hmm. And I love the feeling of going outside and just for a few minutes, just sitting there and feeling the wind, the breeze, the air, just feeling what it feels like to be touching the world with my skin.
Yeah.
And it's very, very, very relaxing.
And there's something about
grounding.
Feet, though. So. I will say there's something about feet, like getting your feet on the earth. Because of course, you're someone who studies the mind and you've been in this. So of course the wind would be appealing to you, and that's more of that element, right? But to be in the body, to be on the earth, in the body, the feet are like such a crucial part of that.
I love that. Thank you so much for pointing that out to me. This is why it's so good to have other people talk to you, because I would have thought, yeah, it is. I would have thought, look, I'm outside. I'm feeling it outside with my skin, and without realizing there is something about being grounded in the earth. Mm-hmm. So that's amazing. So what about you help women also embrace their sexuality? Mm-hmm. So what does that mean? Again, I'm sorry. I always ask, what do you mean by that?
Well, I think that that's a whole can of worms to open up.
Yes, I'm sure.
Like a really multifaceted conversation that could go on for months.
Mm-hmm.
And it's multi-layered. And for me, really like getting someone back in their body is that's the first step, because a lot of us have had a really unhealthy relationship with sex, right? Our culture does not promote healthy sexuality, period, for anyone. Right. We have one of the most sexually perverse cultures on the planet, in my opinion. And so there is a lot to untangle, both in our physiology and in our psychology, around how do we enter into relationship with this hugely important central aspect of life in a healthy way. And it looks different for everybody based on where they are in their journey and relationship to it. So I can't really say like there is a scripted path for what that looks like for a person, because it really depends on who I'm working with. And I don't work on sexuality with all of my clients. That's not the focus with everyone that I work with. But there are some people where that is a focus, and it is a piece that we need to look at. And it manifests differently for different people. So I'm sorry, I can't give you like a blanket, like this is how it works, because it's so individual. And at the same time, there are these key layers that need to be unpacked around our relationship to our bodies, our relationship to sexuality, our relationship to, what does sex mean to us? How we use it or have historically used it in our lives. And it's like so path specific depending on the person.
That's exactly what I wanted to know. Just sort of an understanding. There is so little conversation really truly about sexuality. Mm-hmm. So I'm coming at it to saying the things we look at, and that is perfect.
Yeah, and there are definitely themes.
Understand.
I mean,
I can see how is it something? Sorry,
I think my internet connection isn't the greatest right now. But I was just saying there are definitely themes that are recurrent. Mm-hmm. But you had another question. Is it something? And then you stopped yourself. So
that's okay. I just I wonder when people come to you with wanting to be in their bodies more. Is it something often where they are? Do you often will say, "Look, we need to look at your sexuality"? Is that something that comes up, or do they usually come to you and say, I'm realizing I have, I'm feeling disconnected or unwhole in that way?
It's been both. I've had people who are very aware of that, and they come to me specifically for that purpose, and that's what we work on. And I have other people who've come to me because their businesses aren't going the way that they want them to. Or they're feeling somehow disconnected to some aspect of themselves. And that inevitably comes up as part of the process in the uncovering. Because it is, I mean, if we're talking about like the chakra system, it's foundational. Mm-hmm. It's connected to survival. It's connected to, that whole arena of life. And so it deserves attention. And, when we talk about relationships, I do a lot of relationship work. Sex is in there,
Mm-hmm. Yes. And it's funny, even with working with my own clients, is if we're working with different parts of their lives, a lot of times they don't necessarily want to work on the sex part of it or their sexuality or their relationships, even though it's one of the areas that is most out of whack.
Well, here's what I've found is that if you can address it between the sheets, you can address it anywhere.
Wow. So tell us more about that. What do you mean?
It's kind of like the final frontier. It's like people will have worked out their dynamics and all of these other aspects of life, and yet there's still this dysfunction in the sexual arena. Or it's still playing out somehow in their intimate partnerships.
Right.
Which are some... If it exists in one aspect of your life, chances are it exists in lots of other aspects of your life. And because of the intimate nature of sex and because it is so vulnerable, if you can do the work in the bedroom, it ripples out in a really powerful way.
Wow. Yes. And sometimes it's often with obviously your most intimate relationship there. So even starting from that. So it's going into getting to know yourself.
That's right.
And sharing yourself and being vulnerable. I can see. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, powerful. Pleasure. Like what's your bliss tolerance? Right?
Wow. Right.
What's your bliss tolerance?
That's a question I have never asked myself. Huh. Right. And bliss, and as you ask that, I I think there are almost even almost to a certain level of happiness in our life, like sort of like I'm going to watch out about this or keep myself guarded here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we only have a couple more minutes left. I noticed that you had ministry training. So what was in all of that?
What was involved in my ministry training?
Yeah, and sort of what is the Center for Sacred Studies?
So the Center for Sacred Studies is a nonprofit religious organization that is based in indigenous and earth-based ways of prayer and ceremony. And really it runs under the principles of reciprocity with the earth and all of her beings. So a lot of my work and my study has been with different indigenous elders from tribes around the world. And I've spent a lot of time throughout the course of my entire adult life in ceremony, in traditional ceremonies. I've been very blessed, and I actively sought that out for years. I was kind of like, some people are sort of seminar junkies, and I was a ceremony junkie. I was going from ceremony to ceremony to ceremony wherever I could get that, because it was the first and only place that I found a level of connection with something greater than myself in a way that made sense to me, and made sense to my whole being. And so when I found the Center for Sacred Studies, and I found that the women who run the ministry program are trained up in certain really traditional lines, I was drawn to that. And at the time I was in birth work, and I had also experienced some really intense deaths in my family. And so it made sense to have that ministerial component, navigating in those terrains and in those realms. In terms of like the bulk of what that,
wow. Yes.
what that training entailed, it was 2-year long process. Is mainly online, but there's also in-person components, and I had a mentor and everything. And I've actually since then been a mentor for that program for 2 different graduating classes. And it's a very rich program. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it sounds beautiful. So how do you get your ceremony fixed now?
I still go to ceremony.
Yeah.
I still have ceremony community. It has ebbed and flowed and changed over the years, but I still have some elders that I work with that I've worked with for many years. I traveled to Colombia in February to support a friend's vision quest down there. I'm still very involved in ceremony, and I run my own ceremonies. Obviously not in like, I don't have a tradition that that has been passed on to me, that it's a line that I'm carrying in a traditional way, but I am in a space of being able to create ceremony for people, for groups. I've done that. I've done that over the last couple of years on the land that I live on. So it's just kind of something I weave into my life. And it is a bedrock for me.
Yes, that's beautiful. That is not something that I think a lot of people, at least in the United States, is aware of, or has the opportunity to connect to without really consciously seeking it out.
Yeah. And it's tricky now. I think I was really blessed in the timing of things, because, right now the climate that we're in the United States, there's a real strong, political undercurrent when it comes to race, and a lot of the peoples who are holding these traditional ceremonies are indigenous peoples, and there's a lot in that dynamic as a white woman going into these ceremonies, and I think that it's actually a little bit harder to enter into that world now than it was when I started on my path, and I've been very blessed and very guided in that process to find individuals and communities that would embrace me and that saw me and that are, just like really heart connected communities and elders who are holding these lineages that are, they're really incredible and profound to be able to have the opportunity to interact with these people and to learn from them and to study with them and to pray with them, But yeah, you have to want it. You have to really seek it out, and you have to show up for it. It's not just something you can say like, okay, I've paid for this program. It's like, it's a different way.
Right. Yeah. You really have to be seeking. I know I was wondering, I guess, do we have that sort of, communities here where they have the line and the lineage, where they're passing it down, the knowledge here in the United States?
Well, in North America, yeah. The indigenous people of Turtle Island of North America, there's a lot of lineage holders. The native people are still here. They're still alive. They still have voices, and a lot of those voices are really angry because of the history of what's happened in this country. But they are still holding their lines of prayer, and they've held them very closely because of everything that's been. It was until 1976 it was illegal for the native people of North America in the United States to practice their ceremonies, to practice their religions. So they had to go underground with them. They had to hold them very closely. They had to protect them. They had to be wary to keep what they knew as sacred alive for their children and for their grandchildren, so that it could continue. So one needs to have some awareness and sensitivity around all of that.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, and we, as European descendants, our ancestors had those ways too, but that got wiped out a long time ago. And that's, just to circle back around to the reclaiming of the divine feminine. During the Inquisition in Europe, there were 9 million people, primarily women, who were killed over the course of a couple hundred years, for carrying these practices, for knowing how to use plant medicines, for knowing how to birth babies, for holding these sacred ways, and these connections to this earth wisdom and star wisdom that some of these North and South American lineages have been able to hold on to. There are some European lineages that are starting to reclaim that, but a lot of that got completely annihilated or absorbed into the church.
Right. Lost. Oh, it's really, I would love to learn more of everything what you know about all of this, because this is also not necessarily what we're taught in our typical American history and
not in the history books,
international history courses.
Nope. Yeah.
No. And so this is what I think we all need to know. So thank you I'm definitely going to go and learn a little bit more about that. So much, Tatiana, for being here today, and sharing your breadth of wisdom in so many ways.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Thank you for having me on and for asking some really good questions.
Well, thank you. And before we leave again, do you want to just remind them again where they can find you and learn more about you and your fascinating work and
absolutely
and everything?
They can go to TatianaBerindei.com, which is TatianaBerindei.com. berindei.com, which takes them right to my page on the Superpower Experts website, or they can go to superpowerexperts.com, look under experts and coaches, and find me there. And of course, there's the podcast.
Thank you so much. Yes, sex, love, and superpowers.
Yeah.
So, everybody listening, thank you again for being curious to everybody's they've learned today. And remember to our feet and reconnect with and the body that is our earth. From now until later, go out and remember that you do hold the power to change and
Are you ready to discover your superpowers? Go now to superpowerexperts.com and take the superpower quiz today.